Kia ora koutou, ko Kerry Adams tōku ingoa. My name is Kerry Adams and welcome to this session this evening. Myself and Cara Baddington will be taking you through this session about midwifery and the Bachelor of Midwifery. And what we'll do is I will introduce myself first and then Cara is going to introduce herself. So as I said, I'm Kerry Adams. And I'm a lecturer based in Dunedin, and I teach across the Bachelor of Midwifery program, but mostly in second and third year. I have a long-term experience of over 20 years of being a midwife in both the community and in the hospital, and I've been at Otago Polytechnic since 2009. I predominantly work with third year, so I'm the year 3 coordinator, and I have some teaching in postgraduate as well. And like many of our other lecturers, we have postgraduate and professional activities that we're involved in, and I'm currently completing my doctorate at Victoria University, and I'm the Deputy Chair of Midwifery Council. So welcome, and I'll hand you over to Cara to introduce herself.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Cara Baddington tōku ingoa. Hi everybody, my name's Cara and I'm coming to you from our Wellington satellite. I've been with the School of Midwifery for just about 2 years, and I'm also a graduate of the school as well. I did my own midwifery training through Otago Polytechnic. My own midwifery background is primarily in LMC midwifery, so community midwifery, working with women in Whanau, right from conception through to labour and birth and postnatally. And I have also dabbled a little bit in hospital midwifery in my local tertiary unit at Wellington Hospital and our local primary unit at Kinepuru Hospital. I've also got a background in antenatal and breastfeeding education. What else? I'm about to complete my master's in midwifery, and yeah, just excited to share with you a bit about our awesome program tonight.
Thanks, Cara. So some of you may or may not know exactly what midwives do in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, because we have quite a unique maternity service in New Zealand, which ensures that the main providers of maternity service is midwives. What we know is that 100% of midwives will have contact. Women will have contact with midwives along their pregnancy, labour and birth and postnatal journey. And of those, 91% of women will choose a midwife as their lead maternity carer. And some of you listening in tonight may have had experience of that. It may have been the thing that has brought you here to be interested in the Bachelor of Midwifery. From our statistics, we know that around 37 to 40, early 40% of midwives work in caseload, which means that they work in hospitals, maternity units, whether that's a primary maternity unit or, in rural care or urban care. Caseloading midwives, so that's your lead maternity carer midwives. We know that 51% of midwives work in that, what I've just said, in the hospital or, in primary birthing units around the country. And there's a percentage of midwives who do a little bit of both. Quite a number of us along our journey as midwives have, done some work working in hospitals and have carried a caseload as well. Midwives, of course, provide care to women and their families from very early pregnancy now, usually in the very early weeks of pregnancy to about 6 weeks after the birth of the baby. Some midwives provide preconception care, and one of the biggest things that we're most proud of about midwifery care is that we can provide continuity of care, which is one of the single most aspects of midwifery that sees really good outcomes for women and babies. Also, midwives provide care in the home for home births, and as I said, secondary and tertiary units around the country and primary units. So midwives are what we call autonomous practitioners. So we're responsible and accountable for our own practice. And the thing that makes us unique about New Zealand is that we provide that care, and often we provide it without any collaboration with doctors. Some women need doctors, others don't. So, we do collaborate with a number of other health practitioners, primarily with obstetricians, but often with paediatricians, with physiotherapists, with GPs, with our nursing colleagues, lactation consultants, a huge number of other health practitioners. And now I'll hand you over to Cara. Your mic's off.
A bit of an overview of our program, and then we'll delve into some of the more detailed aspects of it. So one of the important things is to know that it is a 4-year program delivered over 3 calendar years. We also use what we call a satellite model, so it's delivered in a number of different regions, and we'll come to what those regions are, and what we call a blended delivery, so your learning is delivered in a variety of different ways. So what does this mean? It means a long academic year, so 45 weeks. So that is quite a bit longer than standard academic year in tertiary study. So we start sort of toward the end of January, early February, and we go right through till December. The 4-year degree in 3 years encompasses 4,800 hours. And 2,400 of those are practice hours. So those are clinical hours working with midwives and women and families. In terms of your practice requirements, you get a lot of really broad exposure. So you have involvement in antenatal and postnatal visits. So that's pregnancy and afterbirth care, facilitating labour and births, and those things can take place in a community setting or in a facility setting, so in a hospital or a birthing unit. One of the things that's really wonderful and a real strength of our program is that it's really flexible in its delivery. So you get the opportunity to do learning online, face-to-face learning, and your practice out there in your local communities. And you can access the program, as we said, from a number of different places. So although we are Otago Polytechnic, it's not limited to the Otago region. So let's just delve a little bit more into what I mean by blended delivery. The different ways that you access learning through our program are listed down here. So we have self-directed resources online, so they're interactive. So, there's some reading, but also other activities that you direct yourself online. Then we also have online tutorials. So you have lecturers in real time connecting with you about different subjects, whether that's say bioscience or transition to parenthood or the history of midwifery, any of those kind of topics, and you access that from your home study area. And we do face-to-face, what we call intensive, so basically week-long block courses that we deliver out of Dunedin and Wellington. So North Island students attend in Wellington and South Island students attend in Dunedin. And we also have local face-to-face tutorials that we call Hui a Konga, which are in the local satellite areas, and they're every week. And then, of course, your midwifery practice placements, which are out in your community, and those will largely be in your local area, but there is an expectation that you're able to travel for some of those as well. So, for example, in your 3rd year, there is an expectation that you'll travel out of your region for at least one placement. Okay. So you can see here, these are our satellites, and I'm just popping up a wee poll as well that you should be able to see in the chat box, just for our benefit, on where you're located. So you can see here we've got Dunedin, where our Otago Polytechnic campus is. Then there's also Central Otago and Southland satellites, and then in the North Island, Wellington, Palmerston North, and Whanganui. So those are the locations where the local tutorial groups are held each week. And we've had some questions that have been sent in to us in advance, and one person asked, when studying and going to one of the satellite locations, do you have to go to the same location every week? For example, I live in the Wairarapa, so I could go to either so the Wellington Lower Hutt-based group or the Palmerston North group. So with that, you form part of one of those groups, and you commit to attending at that location every week. And that way you build up a bond with your local group as well. All right. Back to you, Kerry.
Okay, so a lot of you will be interested in knowing what the actual academic, what the entry criteria is for the program, and we have some really clear information on the website if you want to. We'll give you a bit of an overview tonight, but you can go to the website and find out exactly, what you need in the way of NCEA, or whether you need a bridging program to join midwifery. And we would encourage you to go and do that, to do some extra reading around this. So that leads into the discussion about your academic requirements. So there are some very clear academic requirements to enter the program. These academic requirements are set by the Midwifery Council of New Zealand, which set all your regulation requirements around undergraduate education, how you become a midwife. They approve all the programs, and they approve what's inside your programs to ensure that you meet what you need to meet to be a midwife. So have a look at if you're coming in as a school leaver, have a look at what the NCEA requirements are. And we know that some of you will be entering or looking at entering the program from one of the bridging programs that the polytechnics around New Zealand provide at the moment. One of the other things that we talk about is providing in the application your essay, and some of you may have already completed that essay, and that essay asks about your demonstrated commitment to practicing midwifery, so it asks you some questions around that. And one of the other significant things that the essay asks for is about your understanding of te tiriti or waitangi, which is really important as the foundation document of this country, and recognising that tangata whenua are the people of this place. So we really need you to, we don't expect you to know everything, because some of you may not have come through an education. We know that we don't particularly teach New Zealand history very well in New Zealand. So for some of you that might be some new information, but provide that in your essay of what you understand about te tiriti, because it will become a very important component of your program. The other thing that's not on this list, but I also wanted to talk about, if English is not your first language, and I'm not talking about Te Reo Māori, that is excluded from needing an IELTS, because Te Reo Māori is an official language of this country. If you come from a European country or one of the Pacific nations, then you will need, or any other country that English is not your first language, or you have not gone through learning English in your home, you will need to complete an IELTS, and you will need to complete it prior to application, and that's a requirement of Midwifery Council. It's actually a requirement of every health program in New Zealand, from medicine right through to nursing, physiotherapy, many programs. And you can have a look at the entry criteria, and it will tell you that we require a level of 7 for an IELTS. So, but if you feel like, although you were born in, for example, France, but you have done all your education through New Zealand schools, you have completed all your high school education, your primary education, whatever, then what you need to do is contact the Midwifery Council for an exemption. And if you've demonstrated that actually you know English to a level of that level, then you will be allowed an exemption for an IELTS. So that's a Midwifery Council process which you need to complete or apply for prior to application. One of the other things that we'll ask about is relevant life experiences for a career in women's health. Now, we understand if you're a school leaver, you may not have all those experiences that others do, but we look at every application on its own merits. So for you, you might have been involved in kapahaka at school, you might have been a school prefect, you might have actually just been involved in the sustainability group. I mean, we will look at anything that you have done. So add that to your application, because we don't, we treat every applicant on its merit, whether you are a school leaver or you have been out of education for a number of years. Everybody brings their own expertise, their own flavour to the program. So, you know, we have a large number of school leavers, and we've also traditionally had a large number of what we call second-time learners. So, you know, women who have worked, had children, that sort of thing, who have come into midwifery. So, you know, we absolutely look at every single applicant and assess what you've done. So appropriate personal qualities, really it's just talking about who you are and what you do and what you would bring to midwifery. Demonstrated strong communication skills and self-responsibility in relation to learning and practice. So this is where also you can provide with your referees an academic reference, which we need 2 referees. I think we talk about it later on, but this is where, if you are a school leaver, you can use, you know, one of your academic referees to talk about your, in relation to learning, that they can talk about that. Strong communication. I mean, often your referees will talk about your communication skills. So it's just really talking about what you've done, what you've been involved with, and part of that is about communicating with other people. Demonstrated good health and good character. So for any health program, if you have any pre-existing conditions which might affect your ability to study, we need to know about them. Is the same as if you are going on and finishing the program. Midwifery Council they need to know, you know, if there's anything, and it can be anything from mental health right through to hearing impairment, and sometimes we have to look at those things and understand that perhaps this is not the program for you, but you must disclose those things to us in your entry, or else if we find it becomes really tricky when we have to have a conversation with you later on down the track and it's not being disclosed and we have to talk about exiting the program. So we really need you to be upfront about those things. And often they're just about, okay, well, what extra support can we offer you while you're in the program? And police check, every applicant has a police check, because obviously, you know, some people, most people don't when they're applying for programs, but some people will have things along the way that need further investigation, and it's found that it was a very long time ago and it's a very different life now, and you know, but we actually do need you to disclose everything, and which will be uncovered in a police check. Another thing that we require of you is a first aid certificate. So, you know, just booking in and doing a first aid certificate wherever in your location you are. Demonstrated computing skills are really, really important, because there is such a component of online learning. We need you to, and we'll talk about the hours involved in this course, but it's kind of like treating it like a 40-hour week. So as part of your job, you would be checking your emails every day. And you know, obviously you are producing your assessments that need to be done online. You know, there's no paper now, and it's about being able to upload assessments as they are due. Driver's license is really important. Just let us know if you're on a learners and about to transition to a restricted, then please let us know. Obviously we can't, we probably have a conversation with you if you look like you're going to have a learners, you know, well into the program. That's probably not going to be compatible with this program. but restricted, we can certainly work around. So just let us know where you are with your driver's license. And the reason is because you're going to need to transport yourself to appointments or shifts, and you may be called out in the middle of the night, and you can't really expect the midwife to be able to pick you up and drop you off, but she will often, in different appointments, or if you're going with her for the day, she may meet you at a point and be able to drive you around. Okay, Carol.
Key strength of our program is the really good pastoral support of our students, and that comes from a range of different places. So each student, when they enter the program, will have a kaiako, so that's a local staff member who they meet with in their study groups every week, and is kind of just a touch point for everything, really. They meet at those weekly tutorial groups, which we call Hui a Konga, and it's an opportunity to debrief on your practice experiences, get support from your kaiako and from your fellow students, and also to practice your clinical skills, your hands-on skills. We don't have it on the slide here, but I did also want to mention that the wider Polytech has really good support mechanisms in place. So our School of Midwifery has a student advisor who often is involved with students who are having some hiccups along the way, whether that's study hiccups or life hiccups. And there's lots of support for students from our student success team in the Polytech for things like academic skills. You also will be getting support from local midwives and women, so they support you by offering to have you follow their experiences or be on placement with them. And the local midwives in each of these satellite areas know our program really well and are really familiar with it, so they really understand what the requirements are for each of the different year levels.
Okay, so some program resources required. So the first thing here is the immunisation and screening test, and I'll just give you a bit of a background here, is that you will notice if you've already done your application that we will ask for various screening tests like, MMR, MRSA, and various other things that I've completely forgotten about. And the reason that we ask for you to be screened for a number of different things is that you are coming into work in a health profession and you are working with a vulnerable group of people. And I mean vulnerable as in pregnancy in itself presents a period of time in a woman's life when she is what we call immunocompromised. So pregnancy means that when you're pregnant, you are more susceptible to catching everything that you have less ability to fight infection. So that's why we ask for screening tests. Now, of course, the big thing at the moment is COVID, and as you will have heard on the news, all our frontline health workers will have to be vaccinated for COVID-19, and that includes you as an applicant to this program. Our DHBs and other health providers are not accepting students into placements already who have not been fully vaccinated, so it will be a requirement for you to go into this program to be fully vaccinated. If you choose not to be, you won't be accepted onto the program, and we need to make that very, very clear. Student fees, you will notice that around the $11,000 a year. And of course, remember when you're applying for tertiary education, you get your first year fees paid. So you will need some textbooks and some clinical equipment, and that information is given to you upon application, and and we say it costs around $1,500 a year. And some of that is you will need a stethoscope, you will need a blood pressure cuff. Some of the other things are a suturing kit. They are not, we're not expecting you to have top of the line of any piece of equipment, but you may choose to, that could be your Christmas present, a really good stethoscope. So just have a think about those things as well. The other thing is you need a really good home study space. So think about, if you're going to be needing to update your laptop, now's a good time. And thinking about your broadband internet, you need really, really good access, because you have online tutorials. And of course, in this time of COVID, we are having more and more online teaching opportunities, because we're having to cancel teaching because of various lockdowns, and that is definitely not going away, and it is obviously the future of teaching, and we try and avoid it as much as possible, because we really actually like seeing you face to face. It's a much nicer way to teach, and actually we really like connecting with you all the time. So just thinking about the future of education, really make sure that you've got good broadband internet access. Student membership to the New Zealand College of Midwives is optional. It's a membership organisation. It's the professional organisation for midwives in New Zealand. And I say it's optional, but actually it's a really good organisation to belong to. There's some really good resources. There's some really good support from them as well. And, then you can attend the meetings with the midwives. It keeps you connected to your profession that you're about to join. For year one students, it's $54 at the moment, although the fees are about to go up. I don't think they'll go up much more than that. And the reason why year 2 and 3 is more expensive is that it holds a little bit amount of indemnity on your practice. And just thinking about those extra costs that you can and will incur is, of course, your car. You need a good car, and of course you're going to use petrol, because you're going to be doing home visits with midwives and attending clinics and labours and births. So just thinking about, all those extra resources that you need. And I think Cara is about to talk about more resources.
So some other things you'll need: a good mobile phone and credit on your mobile phone, so that midwives and women can call you when they're in labour. You don't want to miss out on that. You also need to allow for accommodation and travel to our intensive blocks. So that would be Dunedin if you're a South Island student, and Wellington if you're a North Island student. And it varies from year group to year group, but it's around 3 to 4 intensive blocks a year, and they are a week each. Photocopying, printing for personal work and assessments, and then we have our orientation week in Dunedin for all students, North and South Island, and that's compulsory, so you need to allow for accommodation and travel there as well. Our graduation for our students that complete the program, or when they complete the program, is in Dunedin too, so that's optional, but it's a lovely celebration of your achievement. And we do also run a North Island pre-graduation function as well for any students that can't make it down to Dunedin. I'm just having a wee look at the questions. So Kim, your question about cost of study for years 2 and 3, I think it's around the same, isn't it, Kerry, in terms of the per year cost that you popped up on the slide there. And there's a couple of questions around transition from other professions and going to other countries, which we might, we'll come back to those at the end of the presentation. Another resource to think about for those of you that have dependent children is you really need to have some good solid childcare sorted. Obviously it can be a little bit unpredictable, this midwife life, and so lots of support from family and friends will help as well. So some things that we want students who are considering this program to have a really good think about is, firstly, do you know what it is to be a midwife? Is it what you want to do? Would really encourage you to do some research into what it is to be a midwife. Go on the New Zealand College of Midwives website, go on the Midwifery Council of New Zealand website and have a look at what they have to say. Try to talk to an actual midwife about what her work is on a day-to-day basis. Also, have you thought about, what the expectations are of this full-time program? And I see that full-time is there in bold. Although it is a blended delivery, flexible program, that doesn't mean that it's less work. It just means that that can sometimes be flexed around other aspects of your life, but it is still a full-time program. So you'd be expecting, to be doing a good 40 hours a week on your study in various shapes or forms. So thinking about things like, how much time do you actually have? What are your other commitments? How do you manage yourself? How are you going to cope with online study? What are your financial resources? It's quite difficult for our students to do paid work while they do this program because of the nature of their placements being on call at times. And so really thinking hard on that is a good one. If you are choosing to do some paid work, we expect you to prioritise the program. So if you have a day at work and you get called in for a labour and birth, we expect you to attend that labour and birth. Think about your academic level too. It can be quite an academically demanding program. It's a bachelor level program, and we have a really strong bioscience element, so anatomy and physiology element to our program, which is really important for midwives to be safe practitioners. So you need to be confident that you can meet that level. Think about the impact on your family and travel away from home and how that might impact your life at home.
Okay, so the thing that we want to emphasise and what we do is we run whānau evenings for your whānau, whoever's going to be your major supports for you throughout the program, is really to explain that once you're in this program, you really need good support. It is, as Cara said, it's a full-time course. You need to be able to allocate yourself 40 hours a week to attend to all of those things that we've been talking about, clinical placements, intensives, those sorts of things. The other thing is that we run the program so that you're not expected to do 40 hours of clinical practice a week and 40 hours of academic work. It is run on the premise that the 40 hours a week includes practice and theory. So although times that you'll have bigger weeks, we don't want you to kill yourself doing this degree. We want to make sure that you are balancing it with some sustainability, and sustainability we talk about a lot through the program, that although this is something that we all love to do, we also need to look after ourselves and make sure that we are not killing ourselves to get to the end. And it is something that you'll find that we talk a lot about in Huiakonga, is actually about making sure that we look after ourselves, because our expectation as a school and as actual midwives is to make sure that you go out into practice and you're not killing yourself while you're out there, trying to do this job. So that's why we talk about whānau is, on those busy weeks that you've been to a birth and you're really tired, and some weeks when you are on call, when you are working a lot with an LMC midwife, you might end up in a couple of births a week and you've had a really long week. So it's just about looking after you and making sure that there's, hopefully someone there who can cook a meal for you or pick up your children at late notice, or, just, really look after you while you're doing the program. And, as I said, being able to support you around times of extra stress, like assessment times, exam times that you are really, really busy, trying to do your best to get in the program. So one of the other things I also wanted to talk to you about, and it has been a question that was asked about whether you could work while you're doing this program. And what we need to be really clear about is that although we have had in the past, we have a lot of experience with students who want to hold down a job at the same time as doing this program, and they always have issues around continuing in the program. So really what we're saying to you is, if doing the program should be your primary activity, and working should not be your primary activity. And, the other thing is that we will be expecting you to prioritise your clinical placements, your teaching intensive times, your huiakonga every week, well above your work. So if you're not being able to attend to those like you need to, we would be having a conversation with you about whether it's the right time, whether maybe for you actually working, you need to be working at the moment and not doing the program. So, and also we find that students who are working quite a bit actually can't keep up with the demands of the program, which puts an awful lot of stress on you when you've failed an assessment and you need to resit, and that means you haven't got another resit for a course. It just puts undue stress on yourself when actually you really need to be really working as a student in the program. What's the other thing also I was going to talk about part-time here as well, just to cover off some other students were talking about whether they could be part-time. One of the things that we'd encourage you to do is be a full-time student. But if it's an impossibility and you need to look at, say, doing one of your particular years over 2 years part-time, then that's something to discuss with us, when you're in the program, about what the different possibilities are for you completing the program. There is a timeline to complete this program. So with the new standards from Midwifery Council, it's about completing the program, because we are a 4-year program over 3 years. Most of the other schools, including ourselves, will eventually be going to a 4-year program, so a 4 calendar year program. You must complete the program within 5 years. If you're needing extra time, then you're needing to apply to Midwifery Council for that extra 6th year. And 6 years is the absolute maximum that is allowed to complete this program. So just be aware of that when you're looking at part-time. If you're thinking about part-time, is that there is a finite point, as there is for all health programs, that you must be completed, because it's about keeping you relevant and keeping you safe for the public. So we have to cap those hours that that you needed to finish this program. And I've just noticed there's quite a few questions down here, but I'm keeping an eye on them, and so is Cara. So we will answer all your questions at the end. Okay. Oh, and then we were just going to have a look at some of our lovely photos. So this is the School of Midwifery staff, all our staff throughout our North Island and South Island, when we met together earlier this year. And this is all the students that started in 2021. So this is all our current first year students across, all the satellites in Dunedin this year. And this is some of the North Island graduates at their North Island's graduation ceremony. Was this? Oh, last year. So it was last year. So this is not all of the North Island graduates. This is just some of them who are able to attend. Cara.
Okay, we're just going to finish the sort of prepared part of the session with a short video from one of our recent graduates, and then we'll head to answering some questions. And I'm just going to remind, Kerry's already muted her mic, and I'll remember to do that too, so I don't get feedback. So this is Lisa Thompson, and she is one of our new graduate midwives out in practice this year. And Lisa is from Taihape, a small town in the North Island.
Kia ora, I'm Lisa Thompson and I'm from Taihape, and this degree it means everything to me and my whanau. It is the opportunity to show my children that we are mana wahine and we can do this, but it's also the opportunity to give back to our small rural community in Taihape. And no one can love your own community like someone who's been born and raised there, and to give back is just huge. So to have been able to do this while living in my small community is just, I can't put a price on it, and wish anyone in the future who wants to do it all the best, because it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
we clip just to, really give you an example of somebody who feels like they've made a huge difference to their community. And that's a real, strength about the satellite groups, is that you can still study in your own communities, and then you can stay in your community and contribute once you're finished. So that's the official part of our presentation, and we have some questions here. And I've just taken note of a few questions here. One of the questions that wasn't here but was asked previous to this presentation was, somebody had asked about the cut-off of applications. Just to let you know that we continue to take applicants right through until just about the end of the year. And it's all about making sure that we have, enough students to have a satellite in a particular area, because some of the satellites are a little bit smaller. And also we take them as long as they're not full. So once they're kind of full, then we stop taking applicants for a certain area. So if Dunedin's full, then we won't be taking, or we'll put you on a wait list if you're accepted into the program. And somebody else asked about the registration in Australia after completion. One of the things between Australia and New Zealand is the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act. So although you can go to Australia and they have to register you as a health professional, and the same if an Australian midwife comes to New Zealand, we have to register them as per the Trans-Tasman Agreement. Not so bad for New Zealand midwives going to Australia, because often you've done way more than what has been in the Australian education. So you don't tend to hit the, you need to do extra to register. And because once you complete your education, you do a registration exam, and that allows you to become a midwife. So it's the same as a lawyer or any other degree. You complete the degree, but it doesn't make you into the registered person that you're about to become. It is actually the registration exam of the regulatory body that makes you the midwife. So you have to complete the degree, then you have to do the exam and become a registered midwife, and that makes you eligible to be registered in Australia. Now, at the moment, Australia doesn't have as such a new graduate year, whereas New Zealand does, but they may ask you to do a year's experience in New Zealand to do the midwifery first year of practice program before you can actually go. So it's a conversation with the regulation body in Australia as to what they require, but they will register you. But it's about actually picking up an annual practicing certificate, which is what you need to do once you go to Australia. And I'll just finish my last question, and then I'll hand it to Cara, because she's had a few questions as well. We've had quite a number of questions about the transition from registered nurse to registered midwife. What we're about to start running, and although it hasn't been opened up it hasn't been opened up for applications yet, but it will be next year, is we've got a transition pathway for any health professional wanting to become to do the Bachelor of Midwifery program. So it's not specifically about registered nurses, because we know that every single degree program is very different. So what that pathway will look at is what you've done in your degree. I mean, we're really familiar about the registered nurse degree in New Zealand, but if you were an OT or a physiotherapist or whatever, we just look at what you have done and what you can get recognition of prior learning, the RPL, what we can give you. And for most registered nurses, and I'll talk in particular registered nurses because I know that the questions down here have been about that, is that you will probably end up doing a special topic in 1 year to meet some of the things that you haven't quite met in the first year of the program. And what you'll end up doing is the complete second and third year of the program as it sits at the moment. So that's kind of where we are. I hope that answers the question for people asking about RN to RM. Cara, I know you've got questions to answer.
How long are the placements usually, especially the ones where you're expected to travel outside your area? So usually that expectation would fall in your final year, your third year, and the placements vary in length from between 4 weeks and 14 weeks. So 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 9 weeks, and 14 weeks are the different placement lengths. So generally, if people are going outside of area, it would be more for one of the shorter ones. So for example, one of those placements is required to be in a rural area so that you can explore what rural midwifery in New Zealand is like. And so you might spend 5 weeks with a midwife in a rural area outside of your own location. So yeah, generally those 4 to 5 week placements. I had a question that was sent in to us beforehand about how realistic is this as a career for women with school-age children to manage. And I guess I just wanted to say that I think it's really manageable, and a large quantity of midwives have children of varying ages. I myself, when I studied this program, I had 2 young preschoolers who are now much bigger, and I have a 2-year-old as well, so I've kind of travelled all of the study and practice journeys with different age kids, and it depends a bit once you get into the profession how you structure your family life as to what works for you. Some midwives prefer LMC midwifery, and they might take a higher caseload and have full-time childcare and good support at home as well for when they get called out at night, or they might opt to take a lower caseload where they might do all of their routine antenatal and postnatal care during school hours, and then they have good, on the hoof backup from friends and family for call outs, but with a smaller caseload, less likely to get called out. Or people might opt to go into core midwifery, so working in a facility, so one of your local hospitals, and that's rostered shift work. So it's often around kind of 8 or 12-hour shifts, and they're rostered well in advance, so it gives people some certainty that they can plan towards with their childcare. I wanted to just pop up another wee poll about how many of you do have dependent children at the moment, and there were some other questions I wanted to answer. There's another one about out-of-town placements, stay in the full area. Leslie, it depends a little bit on how far out of town it is and how busy the midwife is and what accommodation options there are. For example, I'm based in Wellington, and some of our students do their rural midwifery placement up on the Kapiti coast, and they may be able to travel day to day, but it's always good and safe to have an accommodation option as well, because sometimes if you've worked a really long day or night, a long drive is not a safe option. Have children and couldn't imagine being away from them. Yeah, I understand that. And if it feels like, 3 years into the program that still just wouldn't be okay for you, then you might just find that it's worth waiting, a year or two to start the program. There was another question here I wanted to answer about how part-time can you make the first 2 years. We do have some students who do the first year part-time. Our program is such that all our papers are required, so it's not that you select a number of papers from a whole range, and in the first year they're all full year papers rather than they're not semester-based papers. So people who are starting their first year part-time, what they would tend to do is do the theory-only papers. So things like bioscience, and we have a paper that's kind of like a sociology paper, and a paper about research and knowledge, and they'll do those, and then in their second calendar year they would do their clinical papers, 2 clinical papers which last all year. hopefully that helps. And another question I wanted to ask that came into us beforehand, and some of you might be interested in, it says, I've always wanted to be a midwife. I'm 45 now. It's daunting to think about a career change. Again, as Kerry mentioned, it's something that's really common in our profession. We have school leavers, we have women right up to the age, I think we had definitely in the last few years, someone in their late 50s studying the program. I feel like a career change brings, it enriches our profession, and you bring your skills and experience to it. Again, just to use a personal example, my background before I came to my love of this amazing profession was in commercial law. So a really big change. I studied with people who worked in retail or, had been full-time carers of their children, people who'd come straight out of high school, people who were farmers, other health professionals, just really, really a lot of richness of experience. So I would say don't be daunted. It's super exciting to discover this at that stage of your life, and you bring some really amazing life experience to it as well. Kerry, do you want to jump in and answer? I wonder, did you know the answer, Kerry, to the question about the study link for part-time study? And there was one too about, I thought it would be great for you, about the percentage of school leavers. I'll hand it back.
Yep. It just quickly, somebody asked about the satellites in Wellington. At the moment we have, and Cara can correct me, we have a satellite in the Hut. We have a satellite in Porirua. Yeah. Actually, Cara can probably answer that better for me.
We have 2 Huiakonga groups in the Hutt Valley because we have enough students, and 1 in Porirua. We tend not to have one in the central city because largely we just don't have students who live in that area, and in terms of the facilities that we use, so the Porirua one is based out at Keneperu Hospital. We use one of the education rooms, and the Hutt ones are based at one of the marae, but because Wellington's a pretty compact city, those are pretty accessible. In the past we have run one up the coast, Kapiti Coast, because we had a staff member up there, but that one we've drawn back to Porirua at the moment. And the Wairarapa students, they tend to either go, there'll be a discussion at the beginning of the year, and they'll either go to Palmerston North, and they'll be committed to going to that Huiakonga, or they'll go to the Hutt Valley. And we do have Wairarapa students at the moment, or maybe they've all graduated.
And I think that the students, just saw that question about Wairarapa, is that if there are enough students in Wairarapa, there is a possibility that there could be a Huiakonga there, but it's actually about the numbers and whether we have a staff member who can travel through to Wairarapa as well. Just another couple of questions here. There was a question about somebody who was doing a BSc, and I think if you're doing any degree program, and a BSc is probably a really good example, is that at the beginning of the year, when you come down, or you come wherever you are, and you come to Dunedin for the orientation week, is that we have a session where if you think that you are entitled to some RPL, you can go and talk to the course coordinators that your previous degree relates to. So if you've done a BSc, come and talk to the bioscience lecturer and then put in an application for RPL. Or there could be other things you could have have completed some other degree that's got a big research component that you want to apply for some RPL or some partial exemption for some of the course assessment work because you've actually completed some of that. So there is an opportunity that if you think that you, and I mean obviously somebody who has even completed 1 year of a BSc, or they or as we call the first year here in Dunedin, and other universities do, but especially in Dunedin at Otago University, they have a HUBS year, which is the health science year, the first year that a lot of students do to try and get into med or physio or wherever. that often that will give you RPL for your first year bioscience and maybe for another course, but it really depends what you've done. So it's really just on an individual basis to see what you've actually done. Somebody asked about part-time and study link. It really does depend around how many, it depends on how many Fs, how many, how big the course is as to how many hours it equals to. So you have to be doing so many hours part-time to be eligible for study link. But that's another thing that you can have a conversation with somebody at the school if you're thinking about going part-time. Kerry Wilson is our academic advisor, our student advisor, and she is very good if you email her, and I will put her email address here, and you can email her if you wanting to go part-time and you're wanting to know if you're going to be eligible for study link. So you can contact her and she'll be able to give you that information. The other thing was that Marguerite had asked about, you said that you'd studied at Massey in 2005. What I'm thinking is that it's probably, a bit too long ago. But when I talked about that RPL process, that can be something if you were if you were applied and got into the program, that is something that you can chat to the course coordinators about whether you're eligible for RPL. So it's kind of one of those things to have a talk about and see what you've got and go from there. And I'm just having a look.
It would be that if it's only one semester, definitely there wouldn't be any opportunity to credit any practical element, but it's possible, say, for example, if you've done like a human growth and development paper in that first semester, you could potentially get a partial exemption from, an assessment, one assessment of a paper. So
there's just a few questions down here about percentage of women that successfully finish and graduate from the course. It's a really complex one to answer because what we find is that we have so many students that start, then so many that go to part-time, so, a percentage who will complete the program within 3 years, a percentage will complete the program within 4 years, and a percentage that will complete the program in 5 years. So, the attrition rate is quite interesting because when we look at the reasons for students leaving the program, they're often really diverse. They can be, that it just really wasn't the right time for them is a big one. Another one can be that they've just had family or life events happen and they've had to leave. Or some students do actually fail the program and exit because, they can't continue. So there's a whole different range of reasons why students don't complete the program. And if we looked at statistics about, say, one group that all started together and who completed it, would give us a very distorted view of statistics because they often finish the year after or the year after that. So it's, like any health program, there is a level of attrition because of all those things, and also because we're predominantly a woman workforce, and often we have parents on the course, and we have people, women get pregnant, and all sorts of different things. It's really hard to pin down, whether we've got an extremely high attrition rate or whether we've just got an average attrition rate with all the other health programs.
And I think, Kerry, from our discussion yesterday, that there was agreement that our attrition rate is basically the same, isn't it, as other schools?
Yeah.
I've just seen a few there. I'm going to jump in on. Somebody's asked about with placements outside the region, if you have children, if that's an exception, and it's good to be really clear that that is not an exception. You'll find that I would say at least half of our students, if not more, have children as they dependent children when they're undertaking the degree. So it's good to think about if you can make that work. Somebody also asked about if there are Facebook groups that you can chat with other students, and so our students are very active in terms of keeping in touch with each other, and that's something as lecturers we kind of stay out of that really, but you also in your own area you will meet every week for several hours with your local cohort, and you become very close with them, and that's a really a special part of the program. There was also a program about the driver's license. It looks to me that if someone's going on to their full license in 3 months, that will be close to the beginning of the program, so that should be fine. I popped the dates there. Next year, our orientation week is the week of the 31st of Jan, so that's down in Dunedin, and our final week of assessment, barring if anyone has any resits or resubmissions, is the 9th of December. Also, if it's helpful for people to know, the way that we structure our year is that during the school holidays through the year is we don't schedule tutorials or block intensive weeks or anything like that during the school holidays. It's also when a lot of our staff take leave, so those weeks we call them study weeks, and it's an opportunity either for you to work on your own self-directed study, or some students use it to do shifts. There's also a question there from Miriana about incorporating te ao Māori and tikanga Māori. The answer, Miriana, is yes, it does, and it is also something that we are acutely aware of building more and more into our program. Kerry, in her midwifery council role, might be able to tell you about a project that the Midwifery Council are undertaking really around looking at being more Te Tiriti o Waitangi honouring, and we want to do that in our program as well. So just to give you a little taster, in our first year we have we try to weave it through all of our courses. We also specifically have a Haora Māori course, which is has some academic assessment such as an essay, but also incorporates a noho marae and some learnings around tikanga for some of the students who also may not ever have been exposed to that, and then also building in learnings around traditional birthing practices as well. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Kerry.
What we do is that very beginning level is introducing students to Te Tiriti, because a lot have never been introduced or know anything about Te Tiriti, and that's what we do on the noho marae. Of course, with COVID, we haven't been able to go to our noho marae the last 2 years, which has been a real shame. But then it continues a thread throughout the program and also introduces the concepts around cultural competence, which is a big part of midwifery, about recognising the difference, that not bringing our own into who we're caring for, and recognising the individual differences in other people. I'm just wondering if you're from one of the members of the beautiful Furman family in Dunedin, my friend. So there is that, and just to add to that. As Cara said, and it's a really good and interesting thing to go and look at the Midwifery Council website, because at the moment we're undertaking a huge project called the Aotearoa Midwife Project, and it is a Tiriti in Action project, so it is run with an equally Māori membership and tangata Tiriti membership. And what we're looking at is all of midwifery that is regulated. So we're looking at undergraduate education. We're looking at, as you'll see throughout, once you're in the program, is talking about competencies to practice, is looking at everything and ensuring that we are meeting, meeting our obligations to the treaty, and integrating Mataranga Māori into our programs of education and into our profession. And it's about Also about the language that's used within the profession as well, and looking at having English and Te Reo versions of everything, and recognising that, of course, just because you identify as Māori, that's actually may not be your first language. So it's a really interesting project to look at and how it's been developed. So something else to have a look about for midwifery. There was another question up here that I was going to answer as well.
Is that about the salary? I can talk about workload, but
yep. I was just going to talk to you. Yeah, it was about salary. I see that Julie has asked about cases to the nurse, the workload's fairly heavy once graduated. So the beauty of midwifery is that you can choose how you work. Probably your first year of practice, once you've graduated, we have what's called the midwifery first year of practice, and it is a compulsory year. And you have a mentor midwife. Now, whether you work in the hospital or whether you work in the community as a lead maternity carer, you still have that mentor. And part of that year is that you must work at least 0.8 within, as an employed midwife, or if you're working in the community, you have to have 20 women booked throughout the year. Now, the thing about midwifery is that you can choose what your workload is. So once you have passed that midwifery practice year, that first year of practice, which should not be an onerous year on you. I mean, we always say to our students, when you're in your first year of practice, it's one of your biggest learning years. So actually you need to think about not having massive caseloads. So, 30 women booked a year is a really reasonable caseload for a new midwife. And it's going back to those sustainability things again about looking after yourself, because if you're not looking after yourself, you're not able to look after women and babies very well. So fairly heavy once graduated, it's up to you. But there is absolutely no pressure, certainly from us, and there should be no pressure from the community to overload yourself in your first year of practice.
And just a comment on that, Kerry, butt in? Yeah. The 0.8 for an employed midwife in a DHB, the 0.8 means 4 shifts, usually 4 shifts a week. And if you go into LMC midwifery straight out of your into your graduate year, which also is totally achievable, that's what I did. You tend to build up your caseload. You don't hit the ground running with 4 or 5 women due in the first month that you're out. You kind of build up over time, and then in the second half of the year you're kind of you're hitting your straps a bit. So there was a question that I was going to answer. Poppy, hopefully I've answered your question about breaks through the year in terms of having those study weeks. So I guess that's a little bit self-directed in terms of if you're on top of your work, then yes, you could take a break. And if you're not, then maybe not. And that sort of structure follows through into second year as well. When you're in third year, the placements are arranged, I guess, around the student preferences and what's accessible in terms of the midwives and what they're offering in terms of placements. And so students will have breaks between their placements, but sometimes you might have some placements that are back to back, and then you might have requested a bigger break. And then I had a student this year who has moved regions, and so she arranged to have a bigger break in the middle, and then she's had some other placements that have been back to back, so hugely variable later on. And I think there was one other question about the entry essay. So Charlotte, I think, Kerry, you probably don't do any of the applications, but I spend quite a lot of time. You are still doing them. And I definitely think we're not asking you to not acknowledge your own experience. And one of the really important things about that cultural competence that Kerry was talking about is actually honouring our own experiences and how they shape us. And for a lot of women, actually, that's their first taste of midwifery, and it's what brings them to think about joining this amazing profession. So we don't not want to hear about it at all, but we don't want the whole essay to be all about your birth, because of course as women we love to talk about our births, but we also want to see that you have gone outside of your own experience to explore what midwifery is. So some of those things I was talking about, like looking at the College of Midwives website, looking at the Midwifery Council and what they say it is to be a midwife, and maybe talking to some midwives as well. But we don't want you to erase your children, certainly not. In terms of when you'll hear back, we're kind of processing the applications as quickly as we can, really, aren't we, Kerry? I know I've got a couple in my inbox that I have to deal to by Friday. So I guess it probably depends on when you put it in, but having just come off the school holidays, we have had quite a few staff on leave, so it's likely that a whole lot will get cleared in the next week or so, I'm sure. And it's recommended to look at this course as 40 hours a week, definitely. And I guess too, Natasha, just to kind of give the heads up that may not be 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. It could be that 10 of those hours on any given week might be spent between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. if you are lucky enough to be attending a birth. But yeah, definitely a full-time commitment. And something that I meant to say, but I think I accidentally skipped over one of our slides when we're thinking about like resourcing yourself well for this, if you do have children, is think about who might be some people who can stand for you if you aren't there for your children. So for example, we talked about that we often have students who struggle with the part-time work aspect. We also often have students who struggle with trying to juggle sick children. Because obviously, as mamas, we want to be with our kids when they're sick, but, if you have an exam or a labour or birth that you want to attend, you can feel conflicted. So just thinking about how you might prioritise that in your family and what extra support you've got, whether it's, partner, family, special friends, someone who could come and stay at your house if there's no other adult there, just in case you get called out, that kind of thing. I think we might have hit all our questions, Kerry.
I was just thinking about when somebody asked about the Facebook page. I know that in the past that one of our previous administrators set up a Facebook page, particularly just for questions and answers about if you have been accepted into the program, that it was a place that you could put some questions and answers so that, you could have a look at the page and see what people have asked, and it could be answering some of your questions. I'm unsure if that is still continuing, but, that will certainly be a thing.
If you are... I don't have it here, but one of our students does she does a lovely Instagram account. Is it Kiwi Student Midwife, I think?
Yes.
Kiwi Student Midwife on Instagram. And she's one of our lovely third years. So if you're into social media, you could follow her and have a wee look at some of her posts and see kind of what her day in the life looks like.
There's actually another really, really, really good page for student midwives, and it's called Student Studygram, and it's actually a British midwife, and she has done the most amazing art just about bioscience, about birth. Cool. And it's the most amazing page, and I would really recommend you go and have a look at it because it's really, really good study resources.
We do have a School of Midwifery, Otago Polytechnic School of Midwifery Facebook and Insta pages, which, we share. We post school-related stuff, but also share cool resources. Yeah. I've just seen another question there about entrance. If you don't meet the NCEA level requirements for whatever reason, it might be that you have been away from academia for a long time, there is a health bridging course. There are a number of them, but Otago Polytechnic runs a really good one, which is distance learning, so you can access it from anywhere, and that's set up to feed you into our Bachelor. So you could have a look on there as well. I'm just going to share up. There's a wee, see if I can make this work.
And also, I'm just also acutely aware that if you're a school leaver and you've got to year 13 and you haven't got any sciences, check out your local high schools, because some of them do summer schools, and it will save you from, because if you do a bridging course, it takes away your first year of free fees. So if all you need to do is a science and you've met all your other requirements, just have a little bit of an investigation about, because if you're in Dunedin, Logan Park does a summer school. So they can, you can do a science course, a level NCA 3 level science course. So, just be aware that sometimes you've met all other requirements, but it's just your science. So just investigate whether there's some other opportunities, because if you don't have to lose that year's free fees, then, see if you can find it in another way.
I wonder too, I don't actually know this, but I don't know if you can do this, but Te Kura, which is the correspondence school, so the New Zealand correspondence school, they offer summer school, and I wonder if they might do NCA level science as well as another option. I've just popped up here a wee little, I hopefully you can see the little pop up there, which will just link you to our program page. So you might want to have a really good detailed look at that, or if you want to access, the actual enrolment, you can visit that. Actually, Kerry, while I think of it, there was a question about a police check in Australia, which I didn't know the answer to, but I thought that might be one for Kerry Wilson.
No, I answered that for her.
Oh, you did? You did?
Yeah,
cool. Okay, great.
So just as a heads up, if you have lived overseas at any period of time, you will need a police check from the country that you have lived in. So what you just need to do is apply to that particular country for the process of a police check.
Awesome. And our lovely backroom person Ashima has just loaded this up for me. So there we go. So if you want to, I can bring the other one back, but this is our lovely Laura, who has her Insta page, which you could follow if you wanted to, or just have a wee little bit of a look on that. And I think there's another one, isn't there? Life of a Kiwi Midwife. Is that Life of a Kiwi Midwife on Facebook? Is another one. Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? Looks like everyone's ready for their cup of tea before bed. So yeah, just want to say a big ngā mihi thank you to all of you for coming. We clearly love to talk about our profession and our program. And yeah, we just hope that we've answered all your questions, and that perhaps we'll have the privilege of meeting some of you at our orientation next year, or maybe in future years as well. And sorry, there's just one more question there about January orientation week. Yes, we're currently having quite a school-wide discussion about this, because we know that we're going to have to, with COVID, put something in place about what we're going to do about orientation week, even if it means that there's 2 different orientation weeks or it's online. That information will come through. Cup of tea time. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.